On March 18th, back in 1990, 15-year-old fraternal twins Dannette and Jeannette Millbrook mysteriously vanished in Augusta, Georgia, last seen at a local gas station after a series of strange events, including being followed by a man in a van. The twins' sudden disappearance has baffled investigators and haunted their family for over 3 decades. What happened to Dannette and Jeannette on that fateful day? And why have they never been found? Hey Rain, how are you?
All good here. How are you?
I'm good. So we're gonna talk about another disappearance. Today we want to talk about the disappearance of two twins, fraternal twins, which means that they are twins but they're not identical. Dannette and Jeannette Millbrook. The disappearance happened in 1990, so it's an old case at this point. Both twins went missing on March 18th, which was Sunday. Their day started off fairly simply, I would say, or maybe the right word is regular. They went to church. After church, they came back home. Now, as far as I understand, Jeannette and Dannette, they had a lot of siblings, and their family had recently changed living quarters. They relocated to live in a different apartment in Augusta, I guess in a different part of the city. And after they came back from Sunday church, the whole family, as far as I understand, Jeannette and Dannette went to a local restaurant to pick up lunch.
Wait, sorry. How old were they?
15.
Oh, okay. Because I kind of imagined like 5-year-old kids.
No, they're 15. They're a little older than that. So they go to pick up lunch from this restaurant called Church's Chicken. It's I think, a fast food restaurant chain.
Probably a family-owned fast food.
It's a big chain, so it's one of those, American big chains. So they go there, they pick up the lunch for the family, and they go back home. Now, when they get back home, the one thing that stood out, and it was mentioned everywhere, if you look into this case, is that the two girls reported that a man in a white van had followed them for a portion of the trip.
Well, that's already pretty bad.
That's a red flag immediately, right? And I guess they were spooked out enough so that they would mention this to their mother. Now, after they ate lunch at the family's apartment, since this family was somewhat underprivileged, they realized that since they recently moved to a new apartment, they would need bus fare money for the upcoming school trip, I think on Monday, so basically the next day. So they asked their mother for the money, and the mother didn't have the money. So the mother told them to make a 2-mile trip across Augusta, which is, a fairly long walk, to see their godfather, who would basically give them the $20. So they actually went. They actually went to the godfather's home across town, and they got the $20 and some additional money to get some snacks for themselves, which was a nice, thing that the godfather gave to them. Now, we don't exactly know why, but the two girls, after seeing the godfather, they made a few more stops to see other family members that were living in Augusta. So after they left the godfather's home with the money, they then went to their cousin's house, and they asked the cousin, who was also, I think, around their age. I wasn't able to find how old this cousin was. They wanted to ask that cousin that person could walk with them back home. And the cousin's mother did not allow that to happen because she said it was going to get dark soon, which I think is a rational decision by the cousin's mother. Later on, they made a stop at their older sister's home, and they stayed there approximately 15 minutes. Once more, they also requested that their older sister would walk with them home, but the sister declined because she had recently given birth, and she was probably in no condition to go on a walk. And so in total, after leaving the home to pick up the godfather's money, they made 3 stops. They stopped at the godfather's place, then they stopped at the cousin's, and then the older sister's place. There's 3 stops in total. And after their disappearance, family members considered it unusual that both twins made multiple requests for company on the walk home that day. So there's a speculation that maybe the 2 twin girls were actually spooked out by that encounter with a man in the white van earlier in the day as they were bringing back lunch for the rest of the family members. However, after leaving the older sister's home, the same one that had recently given birth, then they continued to a local gas station. This gas station used to be called Pump and Go or something like that. Pump and Stuff, something like that. It's now a different chain of a gas station. But the gas station that they went to is actually close to their old apartment because they had recently moved from one area in Augusta to another. So the gas station clerk, this lady, whose name was Gloria, she knew the 2 girls, because they were like local, people who would come in and out. So she did not recall anything out of the ordinary about the 2 girls' behavior as they were in the gas station. And she's the last person to see Dannette and Jeannette. Both girls apparently bought some snacks. They bought some chips, some candy, and some soda. And they left. Now, Gloria, she doesn't know where the 2 girls later went. So the 2 girls, after they seemingly vanished from this pump and shop gas station, they had never been seen again. Anything you would like to inquire about so far in the story?
Maybe just the fact that it's kind of weird, at least from my perspective, that the family just disregarded their fear. They expressed fear. They expressed concern about this man in a white van.
I don't think they necessarily, well, at least from the information I was able to find, I didn't really find anything that they outright expressed fear.
Oh.
They just made a remark that there was a man in a white van who kind of followed them for a portion of the walk from the restaurant back to home for lunch.
But isn't that disturbing enough? I don't know, if I'm the mom, if I was their mom, I would have been concerned.
It's definitely something you would consider.
And they started asking people to accompany them back home. That's another red flag.
It's a red flag.
Yeah, that's another indicator that they may not be outright saying they're scared, but they were scared.
Yeah, so the 2 twins, younger sister, and this is happening many years after the fact, who I think the younger sister was 12 at the time of the girls' disappearance. Her name is Shanta. So she said that, well, basically her account is that Dannette and Jeannette had stopped at both a cousin's house and their older sister's house on the way back, asking if someone could accompany them back home. Shanta said that this was an odd request as the twins knew the area and had walked alone before. So her quote is, "I'm gonna assume something had to transpire for them to want somebody to walk home. So Shanta believes that maybe something happened, either on their walk to the Godfather's house to collect the money for the bus fare for the next morning, or maybe it was somehow related to that earlier incident with the white van.
I might be biased here because I had a similar experience like back in my hometown. I didn't directly like experience this, but there was a rumor back in my hometown at one point that there was a white van roaming around, taking children, walking around. So this white van, a family van, I think, would just stop and not really stop, like slow down, and the car doors would open, and someone would take the children from the outside, inside the van, and then apparently the gossip goes like whoever these kidnappers were, would harvest the children's organ to sell them to the black market and eventually discard their bodies somewhere far. And if I remember correctly, there were 2 bodies that were found, but I'm not quite certain for sure because it happened when I was like 6, 7. But it kind of reminded me of this thing. I'm not sure if it's a global thing, but since I had a similar experience, I'm completely biased here and I'm just gonna say it's the guy in a white van, mainly because it's already weird that the guy has been following them around.
Yeah, so the story from your hometown, it's a real story.
Yeah, there were some CCTV footages here and there. There were 2 bodies found somewhere or like a couple of hours away from my hometown in the middle of nowhere. Bodies of children, deceased children. But it happened such a long time ago that it kind of became like a...
That this van is still around.
Yeah, no van, no one was ever caught, but it became like a local tale.
Okay.
Like a local tale to, you know how your mother would always tell little kids to be careful?
Yeah.
It became like that. Like, don't walk alone, walk with a friend, or call me, I'll take you from home to school, or from school to home. Just don't walk alone because of the white van. It became a local tale.
Okay, yeah. That's, terrible. What
Definitely.
happened in your hometown. So you're immediately jumping to the number 1 suspect, the unidentified man in the white van who
Yeah.
was presumably following the girls for a portion of their work. Okay, I have some more information though. So let's talk a little bit about the gas station clerk, Gloria. So according to the younger sister of the 2 twins, Shanta, based on the clerk's position at the counter, so based on Gloria's position at the counter in the gas station, there were only 2 options that would explain the twins' sudden disappearance from the gas station. They would have had to walk the opposite way from their home towards an alley that locals avoided, as it had been the scene of several violent attacks. Or they would have had to get into a car and drive away with someone else.
I think this one is kind of unlikely, especially the last one, because they ask for a company back home, for someone to walk with them. Then why would they just jump into a random car?
Yeah, unless it was forced.
Yeah, it already seemed like they were being cautious enough.
Yeah. There's a whole thing happening in this story with a very unfortunate way that these girls' case was handled by authorities. I want to highlight a few of the, I guess, mishaps, let's call it, or let's say mess-ups by law enforcement here. So the original police file is reportedly lost, first of all. That's pretty strange. And this is coming from Wikipedia, so I mean, Wikipedia usually has fairly correct information, so I guess we can go with that. Also, at some point, the original investigator for the two girls' disappearance at one point was told by a juvenile case officer, so I feel like by a new guy in the task force, that the two girls had already been found, which led to both the case being closed and the girls' removal from the National Registry of Missing Children. Just because of some weird miscommunication, they had been removed from the registry, and I assume they had been later on reinstalled into the registry. On top of that, the family was given several explanations for the closure of the case, including the explanation that the two girls had been removed from the house that they were living and placed into foster care, where they were eventually adopted. But further investigation revealed that this was false, that it never happened. It's very strange. Seems like they go missing from a gas station, but now law enforcement comes around and says that you put the two girls for adoption and now they're adopted. So they're not missing. I don't know. It never made any sense, this line of thinking, but I think it was definitively proven to be a false narrative. They had not been adopted. Apparently, a relative of the two girls did have her children in a foster care system. And the family believes that this may have been the source of confusion because there was someone else in the family who had, listed their children for adoption. So maybe, but I mean, how can you confuse this in a investigation? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Definitely
Seems
not.
like mishandling of the case to a very bad extent. Now, the case had been reopened in 2013, 23 years after the fact. And the sheriff was quoted as saying, this is the new sheriff. He said, "We think a terrible injustice has been done for the last 20 years. Now, this sheriff later on went on to say that he would add some money, I think maybe from the budget of the police force or something, towards the reward money for the information leading to the closure of this case. However, he has not provided that money. So this new sheriff, he might be open enough to open the investigation, but seems like he's also not completely cooperating as far as I can see from the Wikipedia page and from some other sources that I've read online. This case has been actually, featured on a lot of different podcasts who had made a very good push, especially the podcast called The Fall Line. Now, the hosts of this podcast, they actually helped raise a $10,000 reward. On top of that, some podcasters chipped in, and they were able to raise a billboard for the two girls, which is very good.
Oh, that's nice. How nice of them.
Now, let's quickly jump to the main two theories here that we could or not theories, but let's say suspected outcomes in this case. So the first thing that we could look into is the 1993 Aiken County Jane Doe. So first of all, a Jane Doe, as you may know, is an unidentified woman who has had her remains uncovered, but no one really knows who she is.
Yeah.
It's usually a case where this person has been murdered or some sort of a foul play has been committed to them, and now they are referred to as a Jane Doe because we don't know their true identity. So some people believe, including the family members, that the Aiken County Jane Doe might be one of the two girls because there was a facial reconstruction done on the Jane Doe, and family members believe that the Jane Doe, the facial reconstruction of the remains, strongly resemble that of Jeannette. And we have an image here. I will be showing this on the YouTube channel. I'm going to show it to you right now. So we can see the Jane Doe facial reconstruction.
Oh, yeah.
You could see the similarities.
Fairly similar, yep.
Yeah, very fairly similar. And the timeline kind of fits. Now, Aiken County is in South Carolina. As you remember, the two twins went missing from Augusta in Georgia. But Aiken County is literally adjacent to Georgia. It's pretty close. It's a border county, if that's a term. So it could have happened. It could have happened. And the fact that her remains were recovered in 1993, they were able to estimate that Jane Doe from Aiken County, the one in 1993, she may have been killed sort of at the same time when the two girls went missing. So that's one line of thinking, and we're going to circle back to it in a little bit. Another line of thinking is that Joseph Patrick Washington, a known sexual offender who has been sentenced to multiple life sentences and has since passed away, may have been connected. Joseph Patrick Washington, another man in the case. We have his mugshot here as well. I will be showing this on the YouTube channel. Now, this man, he has been active in the girls' neighborhood, and some believe that he may have been involved in their disappearance. Joseph Washington was sentenced to 17 consecutive life sentences in 1995 for numerous criminal convictions associated with abductions and sexual assault of 5 women, 3 of whom actually survived his encounter, so 2 have not. He faced the death penalty in the murder of Marilyn Denise Kelly and was suspended in the murder of Loretta Dukes, but he has died in 1999 before the trial had started. And this man, we have some additional information also coming up, but I just want to kind of plant this seed in your head that right now we're working with 2 potential theories. The Aiken County Jane Doe and Joseph Patrick Washington, a killer from the neighborhood.
Could it be potentially just one theory? This guy...
And connect the Jane Doe also?
Yeah, this guy and the Jane Doe. This guy caused the Jane Doe.
I think it's a possibility in this case. And the last person that I would like to refer to here before we kind of analyze all of these individual leads is the father of the 2 girls.
The father?
John Millbrook. So John Millbrook reportedly refused to talk to investigators when they did come around, and he wouldn't give a familial DNA sample. On top of that, he urged his other daughter to do the same. So a man who did not
Other
participate.
daughter?
Yeah.
The wreck sister of the twins.
I'm not really sure. It's a really big family with a lot of siblings, so it's kind of hard for me to understand exactly who are the biological parents of whom, but I think John Millbrook was the biological father of the 2 missing teen twins, and he has refused to seemingly cooperate with law enforcement or to participate in any of the search, which is strange.
Did he say any reason why he declined?
So I don't have a reason just yet, but I will talk a little bit about him. But now, generally, what is your sense currently? I'll have some more information, but like right now, does anything jump towards you? I like the way you think, because sometimes you come up with like these kind of good angles that, I wouldn't think about. So is your brain kind of
Working
right now? Is it developing an angle or something? Like, are you seeing some patterns that we all are missing right now?
Not necessarily. I'm just curious if that sexual offender did he have a white van per se, or at least a white car?
That's actually a very good question, and I do have the answer. He did not personally own a white van. He did he was in the ownership of 3 vehicles. None of them were a white van. However, due to his work, he possibly could have access to other types of vehicles, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. But that's a very good question. Anything else?
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm also curious about why the father declined. Like, I'm just like, why?
Yeah, I have some also unverified statements in a bit.
Is there something sketchy going on?
I would say yes.
Oh.
I would say yes. If we are to believe a Reddit post that seems very credible, then I would say yes.
Okay, let's go for it then.
I would like to first circle back to the Aiken County Jane Doe, if that's okay, to the lead number 1. There is a Jane Doe known as the 1993 Aiken County Jane Doe. Now, she resembles one of the girls, as I've shown to you already, and you do agree that the resemblance is there.
Yeah, it's uncanny.
The timeline fits, reportedly because the estimated age is different from that of the missing 15-year-old girls. No official Richmond County, I guess, state authority has submitted the DNA request to the DNA Doe project. So what I'm trying to say here is that due to the age difference between what they think the Jane Doe was and the girls, which were 15, as far as I understand, there was no attempt to match DNA between the Jane Doe and the girls that went missing. The county reportedly states that their reasoning is that the age reported for the Jane Doe is not a match. However, historically, these estimates can be wrong. They are just estimates. There is no reason for the DNA not to be tested for elimination. And there is a change.org petition that is almost at 10,000 signatures, where the family members are trying to get the county that is responsible for the Jane Doe to make a DNA analysis and see if the Jane Doe could be one of the Millbrook twins. But due to the age, seems like they had never done that. Now, a little bit more information about the Aiken County Jane Doe that you might not know. So this victim is believed to have been a victim of a serial killer. So whoever killed the Aiken County Jane Doe, law enforcement believes that this is not the first victim of that particular killer, because authorities believe that the Aiken County Jane Doe is actually connected to an unidentified Jane Doe from Aiken County from 1987, 6 years prior. So there's 2 in total.
Oh, I see.
And another woman named Jackie Council, who has been also found deceased in 1991. Why are they all connected? Is because all 3 victims were found naked and approximately a half a mile from each other. So I do believe that this is a work of the same person or persons, because you just don't stumble across dead women in a half a mile radius, 3 of them. It just doesn't happen. It must have been a serial killer. So when we think about the Aiken County Jane Doe, we do have to consider that there's also other women victims related that could be also connected there. Now, given all this information, I actually don't have anything else to add. Would you still consider the Aiken County? I mean, at least to make sure the DNA doesn't fit. I mean, why would we not do that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Doesn't make sense to just sit on the sidelines and just assume it's not one of the girls just because the age doesn't match.
Yeah.
That's strange.
It's really strange.
I hope that he had actually done this, because in the change.org, the family of the twins, they actually state that if such DNA comparison has been made already, that the family should be informed. So at the very least, if there has been the analysis completed, I mean, they should inform the family, because they're just on the sidelines. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to think. It's a disaster. It's a disaster for the family not to know that maybe this is one of the girls.
Yeah.
Now let's circle back a little bit to Joseph Patrick Washington, the man in question.
Oh, the sexual offender.
The sexual offender. The sexual offender, right? So among the several theories that have circulated following the two twins' disappearance, there has been speculation that the two teens may have fallen victim to a suspected serial killer named Joseph Patrick Washington. Washington both lived and worked in Augusta at a local brickyard, not far from where the twins lived and from the areas they traveled through the day that they disappeared on, according to the Unresolved podcast. Now, Joseph Washington lived on Hale Street, which meant that he would have to often drive on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to get to his work. Now, it's the same boulevard where the Pump and Shop gas station is located, where the girls were last seen. So there you go, that's a connection. Joseph Patrick Washington lived in Augusta, Georgia, at the Hale Street, and he worked at Mary Brick Brickyard. Now, both locations were in the same area that Dannette and Jeannette were, I guess, frequenting, like in the general neighborhood. Kind of makes you think now, right? Now, Washington, he was a stocky, short man who stood at 5'8" while he was best known for driving 3 different cars, all of which were not vans. He didn't have access to other kinds of vehicles because he worked transport for the brickyard, according to the Fall Line podcast. So I think he was transporting bricks for the brickyard. So he could have been in a van as he's transporting bricks. He was actively attacking women in the early 90s, around the same time that the two twins went missing. He had a specific type for his attacks. It was a young black woman who ranged in age from teenagers to early 30s with short hair. And he was sentenced to 17 consecutive life sentences for several abductions, which took between 1991 and 1993. So this man, as I understand, was literally abducting women, and he killed a couple of them in the area in around the same time as the 2 girls went missing. He was living in such a location that in order for him to get to work, he would have to pass the Pump and Shop gas station. Now, the girls went missing on a Sunday. I assume the brickyard may have not been working on a Sunday, but still, a lot of connections.
Yeah, but still, the twins probably got his attention. I am not quite sure, but the connection is there. It's very easy to cross paths with each other.
And maybe they have at some point.
It seems like they did.
And now I want to circle back a little bit to the father, John Millbrook, right? And this is a Reddit post that I feel I have to read to give you the full story. We just have to do it. And stop me at any point, because this is information that definitely paints a picture for this disappearance case. So most recently, this is a Reddit post, but it seems like very well written. Most recently, former federal prosecutor Laura Coates and former homicide detective Paige Reynolds took a fresh look at the case for Oxygen's disappearance of the Millbrook twins. Oxygen is like a television station in America. They kind of, do a lot of reporting on missing people's cases. During their investigation, they came across a startling piece of possible evidence. The makers of the Fall Line podcast, the great podcast that, garnered a lot of media attention and raised money for these two victims. So that podcast creators told the two investigators that they had received a letter from a man named Ernest Wons, who stated that he knew what happened to the twins. So the two investigators reached out to Wons himself, who is currently serving a life sentence at Dodge State Prison in Georgia for murder. Wons killed one man in 1996. Sorry. And this is the fascinating part. The twins' dad, John Millbrook, helped get rid of that body.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Should I go over briefly?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the investigators contacted a man who was serving a life sentence who claims that he knows what happened to the twins. Okay, so this man is Ernest Wons, and he is serving a life sentence at Dodge State Prison in Georgia. So when the investigators talked to him, well, basically, first his background. He is serving life sentence for murder. He killed a man in 1996, 6 years after the twins disappeared, and the twins' father, John Millbrook, helped this man get rid of the body, helped Wons get rid of the body, according to court documents. So John Millbrook, at the very least, was involved in getting rid of a dead body at some point. And he is the father of the twins. Kind of paints a picture here, right?
Yeah, or it could potentially also be the fact that he was involved in something terrible and he didn't want to deal with authorities anymore.
Yeah. That could be the outcome.
Or it could be the worst outcome.
That he is somehow responsible for this. Okay, so then 3 weeks later, after that time when Wons murdered a man, he murdered another man for supposedly knowing too much about the first murder, according to court documents. So Wons killed another man who was, I guess, a potential witness for the first murder, and now this man is serving a life sentence. So in the phone call, Wons claims that he spent time at John Millbrook's home in the early 1990s when he was still a 12-year-old drug dealer. So he was very young at that time.
Oh, wow. Causing trouble at a young age.
He was a drug dealer at 12. It's just the environment probably led him to take that, path. So this man, well, back when he was 12, he was already a drug dealer, and he reported that he spent some time at John Millbrook's home. Now, he said that John Millbrook, the father of the twins, had a substance abuse problem and allowed other drug dealers to use his place as a drug dealing operation. Wons claimed that one of the twins got intoxicated while the two were at their dad's home, and that some of the men, he said, there were 8 to 9 men in total, at the apartment took advantage of her. The other twin saw this and she saw how it was going down, and nobody was saying nothing, and she said something, Wons said. Now, Wons said that he watched one of the men hit the outspoken twin. She fell back and her head hit a table and it busted open, according to his account. Then Wons said he heard one of the twins screaming and some of the people present told him and others to leave the home. He said he was told to come back inside when things got quiet. And he said, I don't think them girls are alive, adding that he believes their bodies could be at a Mary Brothers brickyard in Augusta. He gave a few street names of people involved that night. This information was passed on to Richmond County Sheriff's Office, and they recognized the street names as criminals from the 1990s. A sheriff said that these are names when I started my career early on, and I worked street level in narcotics unit, and these were common names of individuals we arrested in several occasions. However, after interviewing Vaughn's, investigators told prosecutors that while parts of Vaughn's account seemed credible, the facts he presented about the twins were not, and investigators believed that Vaughn's could be describing a different crime. Prosecutors say authorities told them they will not be pursuing the lead from Vaughn's any further. So show producers told Oxygen.com that Vaughn said one of the men allegedly involved was in a wheelchair at the time of the alleged murders in 1990. But that particular man in a wheelchair was only paralyzed after a police shootout in 1992. So that way, the crime that he described against two twins in a house could not have been that of the Millbrook twins, because Millbrook twins disappeared in 1990, and in that house there was a man in a wheelchair who only needed a wheelchair after 1992. Does that make sense?
Yes.
However, he was 12. This guy, Vaughns, he was 12. And think about it yourself. What do you remember back when you were 12? You could easily confuse times and dates and peoples and their characters, because this man was 12 and he grew, into adulthood, remembering the man in the wheelchair as always being in the wheelchair. He may have, confused somehow in his head that maybe back even at that particular moment he was already in the wheelchair. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was in the wheelchair way later,
Mm-hmm.
So we have to think about a 12-year-old's account. And you don't really, remember that much from when you were 12, I guess. So what do you think about this lead that apparently the two girls were murdered somehow by, I don't know, the people who were in John Millbrook home? It doesn't really add up to me, but then again, I wouldn't really... I mean, it doesn't make sense why this lead would not be further investigated, honestly. I feel like it should be investigated as much as any lead, So I hope that it's being worked.
I agree with you completely.
Right. So what jumps out to me in this disappearance is that a few key issues. So the one thing that kind of jumps out to me is I would like to know who was driving that white van. It seems somehow connected to this whole story.
Definitely.
Why were the girls asking to be accompanied by someone on their way back home when they knew the route and they had been walking alone quite, well, I wouldn't say often, but they had done that walk before? Why are they now asking for someone to walk with them?
I always assume it's because of the white van completely. Because half of the time, or more than half of the time they were out, the white van and the guy was there. And of course, the next time they're going to be out, they're scared. There's a fear in them. And I think it's true, it was real. Because they went missing. And something terrible happened to them. So they probably already experienced something quite concerning. Nobody really stepped in and they were already scared.
Yeah.
Someone was following them.
Where do you think the girls went after they got gas in the gas station? Do you think they went back somehow? Because it really happened after the gas station encounter. So do you think what do you think happened after the gas station?
I honestly think before the gas station, they were already terrified. But nobody went with them, so they just went along their day. And from the gas station clerk's account, seems like everything was normal. They got chips, they got sodas, which seemed to be a normal teenage behavior. And maybe they just tried to go back home.
Yeah, that's why I don't think that they were that panicked anymore at the gas station, because the clerk said that everything seemed normal and they did get some chips and sodas. So
Yeah.
I don't think they were, at least to me, it doesn't seem like they were in a big panic at the gas station.
And they didn't even ask for the store clerk's help.
Yeah, and they knew that lady.
And also, I was thinking maybe on their way to the Godfather, they probably were followed. And that's why they started asking for their family members to take them home. But maybe by the gas station, they already assumed no one was following them.
But it just, I kind of looked at the map here.
Yeah.
And all the places that they went. They really kind of zigzagged all throughout, like a certain part of Augusta. And it just doesn't really make sense for someone to follow them for that long.
Do you think they were purposely trying to get rid of whoever was following them?
I doubt it. I think they would have brought it up to one of the family members.
Or do you think they were just being teenagers?
I don't think they were. To me, it just doesn't seem like they were actively trying to lose someone. Especially when they went to the gas station to buy drinks and sodas. It just doesn't seem like they were frightened. Now, what do you think that what do you think about that Joseph Patrick Washington connection? I mean, to me, it sounds like a very strong possible connection.
Yeah,
you have a guy
same.
who was active in the area. And seems like he seems like he may have committed more crimes than he was officially attributed for committing.
Yeah, it's a pity though that he wasn't interviewed about this.
I think he probably was. Like, he
He was?
probably just didn't say anything. He denied, most likely, any allegations. And then also there's a lot of law enforcement kind of hiccups, like complete mess ups. Do you think there's a chance that do you think this is just a really poor job on law enforcement side, or do you think that there's, I don't know, like a potential cover up?
Definitely not a cover-up.
You don't feel like it's a cover up?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a mixture of incompetence and discrimination.
Okay.
Because
Some people think it's a cover up.
really,
Some people think that their disappearance may have been purposely not investigated by law enforcement. And when you read into all of the things that had happened, you kind of start thinking about it, because you have to acknowledge that the case had been closed and the girls had been removed from missing people's registries. I mean, why would you do that? Because they had been found or adopted. There was a lot of there was a lot of claims that the girls have been already found.
yeah, I forgot the adopted part.
Yeah, it almost seems like someone's trying to close the case and forget about it at one point, until the new sheriff came, and only the case got reopened with the new sheriff. Maybe the previous people in that police department know something that they are not sharing. I mean, it's wild speculation, but you have to talk about it. I think what jumps out to me is that I think the father's kind of weird reaction to not search, to kind of even urging his other daughter to not provide any DNA. I mean, why? Maybe it's really connected to the fact that this man was somehow involved in the drug seen.
I think so.
Either
Hopefully.
either he was a user or he was maybe even a dealer. I'm not sure, but that's the information that I think we have, and I think potentially this guy didn't want to provide DNA or like have any. Maybe it's like a street culture. You know how in the streets you are not supposed to talk to police.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, so it could be like a street thing, you know. But then that means he has no remorse for his daughters, which is
definitely
terrible.
terrible
But
for sure.
that's what I was thinking. Maybe it's like a street thing. You don't talk to law enforcement, especially when you're involved in illegal activities yourself. And so that's basically what we have. We have the Millbrook twin disappearance. I don't have anything else here for us prepared to discuss. I think we went over the case, and I generally hope that we get something out of it, because the family members are still searching. There's billboards out there asking for, you know, anyone's tip, because someone might know what happened.